Good Monday Makers, it's time for another Community Build Roundup. In this week's episode, we're going to be checking out a gourd trellis, a slide-out sofa bed, a UTV utility rack, a Boy Scout gear storage rack, a Cricut work table, and a plant trellis. All kinds of awesome builds as always. Let's jump right in and check them out. First up is this awesome gourd trellis, and this comes from Alan. This is really fantastic. Basically, it just has this garden bed here that they grow some gourds on, and they said they used to let them kind of grow up onto the roof, but they said they're getting kind of older and can't really be climbing up stuff to be, taking care of the plants and the gourds. So they built this trellis with 3/4 inch EMT conduit and maker pipe connectors. They used some of the PVC, like the composite wood material, not really wood, I guess, but it's PVC. Basically secured flanges to that with verticals going up. And then they used the adjustable 180 connector to add a triangular brace, basically to reinforce the very top panel. And they've got the top panel connected with T connectors, and then they've got 180-degree connectors throughout as well, with, of course, adjustable angle connectors kind of completing the angle here. From the sides, or from the middle to the sides. It's a really cool project. They've got some cattle panels on there secured, I think, using, I want to say metal zip ties, it looks like. Not entirely sure, but, there's a few different ways you could secure those. I think metal zip ties would work great. And basically allows the gourds to basically grow up and grab onto the cattle panel and then, grow up and attach and get support from that. And then they'll be able to get them off easily. So super cool. Thanks so much, Alan, for sharing this. I really appreciate it. Next up is a slide-out sofa bed, and this comes from Paul. And this is a similar design that we've seen a few times. And basically here it is, kind of, in the just kind of couch situation. And then it slides out and turns into a bed. And the way they did that was use a 1-inch EMT conduit to build the rectangular frame, and then a combination of 90-degree connectors, 1-inch T connectors, and then 1-inch 180 connectors here to basically create the main rectangle. And then they used 3/4 inch EMT conduit with just 90s on the corner and then T connectors spaced apart to basically make the slider that goes in and out. As you can see here, it just slides out, and then you can just add the cushions, to make it a bed or a couch, whatever you want. Paul made it so it can flip up out of the way. And he did that using flanges here, secured to the wall. The flange is secured to the floor, but then the conduit is secured to the wall, as you can see here. And I think he is just using the T connector here as just kind of a friction hinge, and super awesome bust, by the way. But I think he's using the T connector as just a friction hinge, just the amount of weight from the bed will spin inside the connector just because it's so much weight. So basically, he's just using that to fold it up and out of the way, which is super cool. So like I said, you can kind of adapt the design and, customize it to different needs, which is super cool, and kind of the whole idea of building with conduit maker pipe anyway. So really cool. Thanks so much for sharing this. We really appreciate it. Next up is a UTV utility rack. This comes from Rick. You can see here that he's using flanges to secure this to a piece of flat stock here. Not sure if that's wood or a piece of metal. It looks really thin, so maybe it's metal, but basically the flanges are secured to that. They go up, bent corners, and then of course it's mirrored on the other side. And then basically just added a rectangle about halfway up with 90-degree connectors and T connectors to basically create this rack for the back of his UTV. Got some bracing in there with 45-degree connectors and adjustable angle flanges. And here it is attached to the back of the UTV, as you can see here. He's got that flat stock just bolted down to the rails of the UTV. Looks really awesome. He painted the whole thing black, and I imagine that's why he had it here on these stands so he could paint it easily. And I think it's a good idea to do painting after you've built it. I think especially if you're doing an entire thing like this. It looks like he used almost like the textured paint, kind of like the rhino lining stuff. I think he used that, but I think it makes sense to build your project and then paint it as opposed to try to paint the connectors and then paint the conduit, because then you're going to, ding up the conduit or the connectors while you're just working with them naturally. And so I think it makes sense to build it like he did and then paint it. But here it is. Looks fantastic. He's got his gear in the back there, and just a really awesome solution just to add some more storage to the bed of this UTV. So really cool. Thanks so much, Rick, for sharing it. We really appreciate it. Next up is a really simple rack, and this comes from John. This is a Boy Scout gear storage rack, and I really love the story behind this. Basically, to kind of lessen the financial burden on new Boy Scout members and the families, they have this rack that they built, and they kind of just put Boy Scout gear that someone might have grown out of and they put it on this rack so somebody that it fits can use it and not have to spend money on new gear, which is really fantastic and a cool thing that they're doing. And basically just using 3/4 inch EMT, a couple pieces of wood, and a couple flanges. It's just really simple, just a vertical on each side with T-connectors sending a rail across. And then as you can see, just using that to hang up clothes and the different gear here. So really simple, just a few connectors and just a really awesome thing that they're doing, like I said, and just really cool that Maker Pipe and Conduit could help out in a small way. So really cool. Thanks so much for sharing this. Really appreciate it. Next up is an awesome project. We've got Boyfriend of the Year here. He said his girlfriend, this comes from Robert, he said his girlfriend wanted a Cricut table, and so he went all out and made this awesome table for his girlfriend. And basically here it is all finished. And then he goes through and has all the different materials here, and he did a little write-up kind of talking about each of the things. Basically, here's some bins that he put or a crate that he put some organization of the different vinyl that's used for the Cricut, which is really cool. And then here he's talking about the tabletop that he made. And I think this slides apart. Yeah, I think it's made so it kind of nests and then slides apart. And then he really made sure to level it out so that the vinyl could feed out onto the table. And yeah, here it is. You can see kind of the two pieces slid apart. I think that's what it does, or maybe it's just, yeah, the top slides on built-in rails. There you can see he said there, which is really cool. Yeah, because there it is all compacted down flat. He's got some storage shelf underneath. He's got this storage down here, and I think this is on sliders, as you can see here, so we can slide it out, which is really fantastic, or I guess so his girlfriend can slide it out. And then you can see here the framework. We get a couple of good shots, basically pretty simple. It's just 4 verticals in the corners with casters on the bottom. Used a lot of T-connectors to basically add these cross supports and the shelf supports there. And then you can see T-connectors up here again, and pretty simple frame overall to hold up the wood and kind of be the main frame for the cart. And then you can see here, added some finishing touches, did some painting on top, did a space scene, which is super cool and just a really awesome build. Like I said, Boyfriend of the Year. I'm sure his girlfriend really appreciates that. And I love tables like this because I'm a huge hobby person, and I think building custom storage and custom tables and desks and things for hobbies is super cool. So really awesome. Thanks so much for sharing this, Robert. Really appreciate it. Next up is a trellis from Chet, and this is really cool. We don't see a ton of trellises with this design, but I think it's really awesome and just looks really cool. You can see here it's got a lot of bends in it, which gives it a really unique look. And basically, it's 90-degree bends in the corners down here. And this really does save on connectors. If you already have a bender and you have a project, or even if you invest, $30, $40 into a bender, you can save money over the long run, especially if you're building a lot of projects, because it might come out cheaper than actually buying, a T connector or a 90-degree connector for every corner that you need to make. So he made 90s here, bent, and then used 2-hole straps to secure the frame to the raised wooden garden bed. And then that basically just goes up. It's mirrored on the other side, and then there's another 90-degree bend at the top, and then goes across and does the same thing on the other side. So instead of 2, 4, 6, 8 connectors plus the other 4 that he used, it'd be 12 total. He's only got 4 total. So saved a lot of money on connectors and just had to do some bending. And actually, I think I see some couplings in there, which makes sense. I think I mentioned this in last week's episode. If you're doing a project that has a lot of complex bends, instead of trying to get it perfect with one piece of conduit, it often makes sense to just split it up into halves or 3 different pieces so you can really focus in and get the bends correct on one part, do the same thing on another part, and then connect it back together with couplings. And I think that's what Chet did here. You can see I can see a coupling right above the T connections there. So, had to spend a little bit more money on connectors, but still saved a lot by not using connectors in all the corners, which is a good thing to keep in mind whenever you're doing a lot of projects. So really cool. And then you can just see the trellis netting is attached to the frame. I see some, it looks like just zip ties on there, which is really classic and easy way to secure that. But now it's got a great place for the plants to climb up and get some support. So really awesome. Thanks so much for sharing all these projects, everyone. As always, we love seeing them. If you want to see any of these in more detail, they'll be linked down below. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.